ठीक है क्या, इस चीज को ऊपर रखेंगे,
नहीं,
रेटिंग हो जाएगी।
this looks good.
एक मिनट। फ्रेम थोड़ा अजीब सा है।
Okay, I won't edit this. I will have this.
Great.
Okay, so here we have. हम डिस्कस करना चाह रहे हैं इस ट्विन के दो स्पेसिफिक एपिसोड्स. वन इज योर पिक एंड वन इज माइन. वी विल स्टार्ट विद योर पिक. ओके, somebody is going to emergency, somebody is going to jail. So first thoughts about this episode.
First thought, so मुझे I've always remembered this for the map scene, and but revisiting the episode, I realized that that was just a smaller part. Like it happens to a lot of us too, that in memory the smaller parts become more prominent and all of that. So that was interesting to see that how that changed and how memory had did that. And of course, it was one of the big block of cheese episodes of course it was fun as always. And it was good to see that like there's the subplot with Sam, finding out that his father was, unfaithful in the marriage, and then that's how it starts. And then, so they have already seeded in. So when chief of staff is coming, what was his name?
Leo McGarry.
Leo is coming, so he's already talking about their protest in the city. So they're already setting up another subplot. That was interesting to see. Okay, and that how that comes in, and so those things were interesting. And but I from rewatching it, I realized it was a Sam's episode. I mean, going behind what is going on in his mind and how he is. For once, he is not able to separate, work from personal life. It starts affecting him, and we see in the end there is a very important line that he says to Donna. We can come back to that. So, what did you think about the episode?
So this was one of those episodes where you have an insight into a character, but this was also an episode about perspective. So there are three subplots, right? One is Sam's his own, then the protest, and then the story about the spy. I'm not talking about a big block of cheese. That is kind of for comic relief. Okay, but that is the key to that. For in each subplot, the perspective changes. So the way he perceives his father before and after that, his father's infidelity. How Toby's perspective changes when he's talking to the officer who was protecting him. And last, the perspective he originally had since his college days about this particular spy who was imprisoned, and according to him, it was just about McCarthy and targeting people who were not in accordance with the standard policies of the government in those times. So everything was about perspective, and that was a very, in theory, that was a very consistent theme throughout the show. And I always believed that Sam was the from the first beginning of the show, Sam Atma hai of the West Wing. He's the spirit of West Wing. He's where the
Okay.
West Wing should go towards. Okay.
Mm.
Toby is the idealism, but Sam is the spirit. In this episode, that role is played by Donna.
Mm.
So she
Okay.
is the one who acts as the spirit who controls Sam in the end. Okay, sometimes a bitter truth should not be told aloud.
Mm. Right. And there was a minor thing that I don't know whether you noticed or not, but so one is, Bartlett is he's reminded that we are looking for the library for you, and
Mm,
there is some rule which because of which we cannot get this land, and he's in his own charming way. He's like, who was the idiot who signed this law? And he's
yeah,
reminded that you are the one. And I found it interesting. Think I don't think I've noticed this before, but Sam was also in the same scenario that he has to revisit something he has done earlier.
yeah,
So
mm,
his point about the spy is something that is revisited, and they're like, "Oh, okay, when did I do that?" So yeah, that was
mm.
interesting that both of them are able to revisit their earlier thoughts, and now they think differently than they did at that
I think that's a great point, and that is something I think is very Sorkinesque because if you go through Sorkin's body of work, he revisits his own works a lot. Okay, there will be plots and
point.
subplots, and sometimes
Okay.
phrases, entire episodes will be based on something he has already done. Okay, maybe it was a little meta. I'm not sure that it was intentional or not, but I think the it also showed that one moment with Bartlett. It also showed that Bartlett was still not very, sure whether he wants to quit after his first term or not, because that was his deal with Abigail. So he's actually very tentative about it when he's asking Charlie to, go ahead and we will talk about it at a later point. So I
Hmm.
think he's very tentative, and that was, I think, first strong hint that yeah, he is going to run for the re-election. He is kind of hoping this.
Ironically enough, it gets revisited in the other episode that we are going to discuss.
Yes,
And we see the consequences of the seed that is sown here,
yes.
and the conflict and the arc of it mm, coming to a close. Yeah, yeah, that was interesting. Mm.
So, what was your highlight of the episode? Which subplot or plot you really liked?
Subplot, still, I mean, I would remember this, I mean, like I did earlier, I would remember it for the episode with CJ because you don't sometimes even think how simple things can affect
Mm, mm,
how people look at a particular community or an organization, and you don't even know the biases that are brought in by things that you just, I mean, of course, why would the world map be any different than you have seen before, and why wouldn't you assume that that's the case? I mean, world map is world map. Why and we have explored the earth for hundreds of years, and we know this is the map. I mean, why would be any different? And just to bring it to CJ and through her to us, because they are, I mean, she is, our entry into this point as the
mm.
audience that is like, okay, what is going on? And I would the part about Africa and Greenland, that is something the first time I saw, it stayed with me. I mean, how we, for example, Africa and South America, we don't realize how huge they are.
Hmm.
And we think that, oh, this is a place that is struggling economically, financially, and it doesn't help that we don't realize how big it is and how we. I mean, even a little off topic, but something like Black Panther was a big reminder of how diverse it is. We just see it as a
Hmm.
block. Maybe which speaks to our myopic view. Maybe a lot of people, maybe some people have a more um, diverse view of. And another thing about that, when they flip the map to top bottom, that is also a very interesting point. That why should North be on the top? And you do associate, yourself with okay, top being better, or the earlier thing that we used to hear about that, uh, you know, um, blackmail is has the connotation for black, and
Hmm. Yeah.
white is the color of purity, and that does affect us. So it
Yeah.
was
That's
another
true.
area where I wouldn't think a lot of people are thinking would be thinking before the episode, or or in general they would ever think about it. And so yeah, although I still found it very um, mm, so the one that they suggest is the the best
Peter
alternative.
Pradesh. Yeah.
So I still found it very unnerving and weird. Why was it squished at the top and all? But yeah, of course, that's the point. Our feelings shouldn't come in the way of what is, and the relative position of countries and all of that. That is something that I'm still a little unsure about how that works. But yeah, I mean that is so probably the guys who fly planes, they have the actual maps. I'm assuming that's how
Yeah,
it
they
works.
do. Yeah, they do. So, for example, if you are going to from India, you are going to US. Okay. You will
Mm,
from India, you will navigate to the North Pole, and then you will come southwards through Canada. You will enter. So
mm,
that basically just a small time spent on the North Pole changes the access so much that you are saving a lot of fuel. So yeah, they have a different kind of map, but I'm not sure exactly what they do. They don't allow people in cockpit anymore.
yeah, yeah, sad developments. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Mm,
one thing, I mean, the thing you told, said, right, about blackmail having a negative connotation. Um,
mm,
yeah, it is actually true because for so many things, the shades of dark, black, and they are considered inferior. Um, even, I mean, even in country like India, where we are technically called brown, and
yeah.
in a movie like Bajrangi Bhaijaan, when Salman Khan sees that young girl and she finds her to be too fair to be um, anything but a upper caste girl.
Mm, yeah.
There's literally
True.
a dialogue that she might be Brahmin because she's so fair. So
No.
yeah, it is just yeah the way we think, and yes, the top-down approach that also comes in organizational structures where you see people at the top having more power. They do have more power, but economically, the money doesn't trickle down from top; it trickles down from bottom to up. So the people who are in the bottom of the pyramid, they work and their money goes to the top people,
The
people
top.
at the
Yeah.
top, right? Because,
Mm,
I mean, assuming everyone works for 10 to 12 hours, okay, a CEO probably earns 20 to 50 times more than a low level developer or
mm,
engineer, okay?
mm,
So, trickle down money is actually not a trickle down, it's a trickle up. Yeah, so that
mm.
so this is what I really liked about this episode because it was about the perspective, how the perspective changed. I
And
think
challenge the usual one. Yeah.
yes, and I also really liked that subplot about the spy. because I actually knew about the original case before I saw this show. Okay, because of some other
Um,
movie or some other show,
mm,
and it was just so surreal to see how it impacts other people. So we just when we think about stories, we think about protagonist and very close relatives, but this can have generational impact. So
mm,
that spy died, his son is impacted by it, his granddaughter is impacted by it,
mm, mm,
and just to think, a person who has no connection with that spy, who is working in White House, okay, who he is getting impacted by it.
mm,
So actions have long-lasting consequences sometimes.
mm. Although initially, it is interesting how we as an audience change our view as the story progresses. Because earlier it's about a dying man who wears a small bow tie. We get a mental image of okay, what this person looks like, a sweet old man. And then we find out what he wants, and then we find out okay, how wrong is what he is looking for. And but that is another thing that in the end, Sam chooses to you know because he was not um, he was not the one to blame. He was not the part of the espionage, the son, and yeah, he should be spared about the knowledge. That's it's fair
And he,
actually. I mean, but
yeah,
it's not easy. Sometimes it would feel better as Sam initially thought because he was injured, um, rather hurt from the fidelity of the father, and yeah. Mm.
yeah. I mean, since he was dying, probably that was a bigger factor. Uh, had the father, I mean, spy's son, okay, or the girl's father, had himself come to the office, he would probably have told, okay, your father was actually a double agent. So my point is that it helped that the person who was supposed to get the news was dying, was terminal.
Mm. Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
because if hypothetically if he's a normal person out of some place and he gets the news that Sam Seaborn thinks, okay, on record that yeah, his father might be innocent, he can go to newspaper and say things. So that would have
Mm.
compromised Sam himself. So he took that chance because he was capable and the situation was very fragile.
Mm. Mm. And I found it interesting how Sam was a little hurt that Donna tried to use or she thinks that, you know, he has the ear of the president and she kind of manipulates him. And he's hurt, and from what I saw, that was not true. He wasn't that vain. He wasn't, but he does make his proceeding, but at least he doesn't take it to the president. But and also although he is slightly emotionally manipulated, but he still is diligent. He does go to the inform the FBI in advance. He just does do some sort of background check before moving to the president and all of that. So that was interesting that he is thorough in what he was doing.
I don't think he was hurt in real sense. I think it was like he felt deceived. First deceived by his own father, then deceived by a close friend.
Mm.
So that is what I think. I mean, 10 days, 15 days down the line, he might have thought, okay, that was a pretty smart move from Donna.
Yeah,
He
in
will
a
be
different
more
context.
objective once the emotions settle down. I I also had this very deja vu kind of sense when it was told to him that even when they had broke the code to to
mm,
understand the transcripts.
mm,
Okay, they didn't want to tell the world.
mm,
Okay, and only after, they were able to go past that particular time of Cold War, after 90s, when the Cold War was done and dusted. Only after that they came up and got this information registered with themselves. The
mm,
I had a very same sense when it was also shown in Imitation Game, when they
mm,
literally let a member of their team, his brother or father, die. They just let him die in a ship because they didn't want to expose them. They didn't want to tell
mm,
Germans
mm.
that we know the enigma.
What is your plan? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
So
mm,
that was, I mean, these these kind of procedural episodes, they provide so much insight into, um, the inner workings of uh, U.S. government and in general across the world.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. Even the Toby angle, it was interesting to see that, he goes to address a crowd, and the one who actually has a conversation with him is the police officer lady
Yeah.
who is supposed to protect him, and she becomes uh, you know, the entry to Toby so that he can talk about it. But it was interesting to see him feeling jaded about things because he knew both sides of the argument. He could argue from both ends, and which was always his strong suit. Because he knew the government stand and why NATO was good, but he also knew what was wrong on that. I
Yeah,
don't know
I
how
agree. I
that
mean,
would help the administration.
yeah, but
Maybe it was just to make him rethink things and be more conscious of, okay, we have to think of people who are in lesser position. I don't know.
I think he was more clamped down by the role he has with the government, because even I think an independent Toby would have probably joined the protesters, which I think he does when he protests to Josh, who is
Mm-hmm.
more about the government than Toby himself. Toby is the communications director, but he's deputy chief of staff, so he is more in the government than Toby himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Oh, that's true. So he has, um, yeah, I mean, maybe, I mean, he sheds a few layers of jadedness that he has being in the
Mm,
system. Maybe
yes.
the next time he thinks about this topic, he'll be. It was interesting to see how he mentioned that there is no diversity or rather local representation of the black people from Washington there. And
Mm.
this is just people who want to feel good about themselves. They're just bored. And which is something that probably is happening more in the world today than it was happening then. People just
So,
want to feel that okay, we are nice people, we care for people who are underprivileged, and do things which are not necessarily impactful, but they do them anyways, just to look better than the others and being holier than thou. So yeah, that is something that has increased in the world last few years. But yeah. Mm,
one thing about diversity in that protest, one of the criticisms of um, uh, you know the liberal protests in 1960s and 70s against the Vietnam War was that it is too white. Okay, because that time African Americans were fighting their own battle. Okay, against the
mm,
for their civil rights, and these
mm,
guys were having another protest, which was like an umbrella protest. It was like about everything, and it had no direction. The leaders were too radical that um, any self-respecting politician will not go anywhere close to them. So that led to hippie culture and a lot of things that it end up you know became representative of. The thing is that this is when Toby is like 30 years older. So 30 years have gone by and things are very much similar.
Mm.
I
Okay.
think until recently, until probably 2016, the uh, civil disobedience in US has not got their diversity angle correct. It is only around 2016 when diversity started getting involved in these kind of protests and commotions.
Mm. Maybe it also speaks to the fact that, for example, if there is a person who is working a daily job or
Hmm,
working as a
of
server
course.
somewhere, he does not have the luxury to protest. Maybe a person
Yeah,
who
that's true.
has things, available, they don't have to worry for tomorrow's food or this month's rent. They have
Hmm,
more luxury to even think about it. A person going day by day, thinking about their car EMI, a second, third hand car EMI that they have taken and going to the nearest burger shop to work, they don't have the liberty to.
hmm.
Yeah, that is definitely. Yeah.
Okay, let's move to the second one, faith-based initiative.
Hmm.
First thoughts.
First thoughts was again, it it has a very strong sense of beginning of the end, um, and it is more bitter than sweet because
Hmm,
we see these seeds of Toby, getting. I mean, something that it is a start of the path for Toby in which he does some regrettable things later on, and he feels left out, and what all happens later on. And but at the same time, it is also interesting to see how the future first family is so unaware of what is coming, and they're very uh, innocent to what all they will have to go through. So that was interesting to see. There, I can't think of a more. Maybe there's a better word, but innocent is the one that they're just unaware of what all lies ahead. You can see the
hmm,
wife is disapproving of the idea because she doesn't want him to be part of the Senate anymore, and now he's taking up a bigger responsibility.
hmm,
And of course, we are seeing the President Bartlett coming in a situation where he's getting more and more compromised. They have to manage how much work he does, how much time he spends. Yeah, that is interesting to see how what we saw in we discussed in the earlier episode when things were quite a bit under control, and now they have come to a point. Yeah, they've come to a head where we are. I mean, the president is facing the consequences for the stress and he's going. So, what did you think about the episode?
Um, yeah, for me, now that I know the impact of the episode and this entire Santos storyline, um, it was interesting to see it kind of reflecting the uh, the beginning of Barack Obama, how he
Hmm.
becomes the president, and how close this show gets to the real story before time. Um,
mm,
I think I always like the episodes which are about transition because the transition episodes they tell a lot about hidden personalities. When things are happening, things are moving from point A to point B to point C. Um, you know that everyone is doing their job as they are supposed to. But when someone goes from point A to point, let's say KLM, something like that, somebody takes a leap of faith, then you see the real personality.
mm,
I think Josh morphing into Leo McGarry, okay,
mm,
that was the biggest takeaway from this episode. We always knew that, he was a reflection of what Leo was,
mm,
but I always saw him as someone working under Leo, who has that, you know, patronage of the big guy. But now he was on his own and he was
mm,
picking his own candidate. He was literally picking the horse for the race. And
mm,
the episode opens with a couple of very interesting things. It shows the family life of Santos, which is
mm,
gives us a little bit of reflection of what Bartlett household might have been when Leo
mm,
came and told him, "Okay, I'm thinking about you. Let's put you to put you into the White House."
mm,
How that conversation might have gone. Um, Santos is done. He wants to quit. Similarly,
mm,
Bartlett was like, "Okay, I'm suffering from MS. Maybe not today. Maybe tomorrow I will get impacted. So I don't cannot be a active politician. Governor of New Hampshire is not a very active role. Okay,
mm,
now suddenly both of the people who are sort of looking into retirement, they are asked by someone who wants them to run for the highest office. That's not only a big deal, it is also a life changing thing. Okay,
mm,
people think for months before changing for a job, and this was like going for the presidency. It was unimaginable amount of stress they are going to face. um, the highlight for me for that episode is that in the previous episode, I mean the episode before this episode in that show, it was about Josh convincing Santos. This In this episode, the role reversed. Now Santos was
mm,
convincing Josh. Okay,
mm,
so I liked that aspect. Um,
mm,
Another thing I liked that uh, the subplot about CJ and
mm,
the way it ends. Okay,
mm,
I also like the segue of Donna to the Russell campaign. That was
mm,
I mean, that was an unlikely thing. I was not expecting that. Uh, I think it was a risk uh, the writing team took that paid off really well. The writer of this episode was Josh.
oh, okay.
Bradley Whitford wrote this episode. So
Okay.
yeah, so I wanted to pick a non-Sorkin episode, okay, because
Mm,
it was very difficult
mm,
to pick a Sorkin episode. I like so many of them, so I wanted to pick something that is um, a little bit about transition, a little bit about the changes that happen after Sorkin leaves the show, and something where now the writing room is getting grip on the show because season 5 was not that great. Um,
mm,
but I mean, I don't know. It was absolute coincidence that I picked one of the most Sorkin guy. I picked
mm,
episode written by Bradley Whitford, who has been
mm,
working with Sorkin for decades.
mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. No, it was definitely interesting to see how, but it was the right move. Although they were hinting at that Donna was getting frustrated for a while. Every
Hmm,
time she would be like, "Okay, we have to talk about this. We have to talk about this," and he was taking her for granted. And of course, I think Josh was taking some advantage of because he could see there is some romantic interest from Donna. Maybe that also made it um, him feel that way, that it was okay. And also maybe he underestimated her because when she came in, she basically knew nothing. So she
hmm,
always saw her as the Donna who came in and was just barely knew how to work the phones and not much else. And then she grows into this role, and um, the vice president's campaign, they see her as a person who she's now, and Josh maybe still sees her as who she was, and has kind of forgotten. So, I mean, it was good that she takes that step, even um, beside her, romantic feelings for Josh, and she decides to move away. So that I think that was a good um, potential path for the characters, and of course, I mean it also sets them up for a point later on, which they will become into parts of rivals and how that will play out. So yeah, that is also a good path to put the characters on.
yeah. I think, I mean, I have this theory that Josh not acting upon his sentiments towards Donna and otherwise as well. But it was more about how people frown upon office place romance.
Mm,
Okay. I think, in terms of just about relationships, I think it helped Josh more than Donna, that Donna moved out. Okay. In terms of
okay.
the relationship they ended up having. Um, because, see, to be really frank, Donna was not a graduate. She, beyond that circle of people, she might not have made a lot of headway. And that's probably the reason why she went to Will rather than someone else. She could have gone anywhere. Okay, but she picked a campaign she knew that Josh is not going to pick. Okay, the
Okay.
chances were higher that Josh will go and work for Hoynes at that point, because I mean I'm assuming that she has no idea that Santos is in
Mm,
picture. So
mm,
the she picked a campaign where she will be positioned against Josh at all costs. Okay,
mm,
because she didn't want to be in the same place. She didn't want to be in a place where Josh is her boss again. Okay, and when you
mm.
lose that power dynamic, then it becomes easier to pursue romance. That was not in her
Okay.
mind. That was not in her mind.
Mm,
But
mm,
I mean, that is how it ended up, because uh, even when they ended up working together on the Santos campaign later, okay, the equation was not of a very strong boss and employee
mm,
relationship. Okay, and even she found a segue to work for the first lady rather than uh, president himself. So
mm,
yeah, in terms of purely about relationships, I think it worked for uh, Josh that Donna didn't pick any other campaign, and I don't think she had many options, because outside that West Wing circle, I don't think not many people knew her to be such a
mm,
savvy person. Because yeah, Will saw the potential which CJ saw a couple of seasons ago. You remember there is an episode where CJ and Donna are struck in one room. I think something has happened and it's a lockdown. Something was there, and they were in
Hmm.
the same room. And CJ says that if it was not for Josh, you would have left long back. Why aren't you
Hmm.
pursuing something else? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's Will is not the first person to notice that she's talented, but until unless it's a person in that West Wing, they wouldn't have any idea. Why would someone from some senator's office will know that okay, Donna, who is the secretary to deputy chief of staff, is has some great potential. They has no reason to have that thing
Hmm.
in mind.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
So
Okay. Hmm. And I mean, for a change, it was good to see how things in American politics. I mean, revisiting West Wing becomes sad at times because we still see the exact same points being discussed. But for once, at least, I don't know for how long, but they seem to have made progress on the gay marriage issue. And until that gets reversed, at least for some time, they've made some progress. So yeah, that was interesting to see on that
yeah,
area.
yes, yeah. I think that was in at least in civil life that was going to happen, anyways. But yeah, it was one of few areas where there was lack of opposition because it didn't affect anyone. It didn't hurt anyone's religious sentiments very strongly. Abortion was a very big issue in America forever. Okay, um, but um, gay marriages, gay relationships, uh, those were still more acceptable, at least in some parts of the country. At least in the more
Mm.
urban, more secular parts of the country,
Mm.
you have
But I
someone like
think that is changing. I am hearing some murmurs about reversing the gay marriage. There is some talks starting,
so.
but
It
I
is
don't know how
actually
far it will go.
unnecessarily
But that is something that is starting.
yes. So civil reunions were acceptable. Okay.
Mm.
So, but marriage is a, for a lot of people, marriage is a religious term.
Mm. Okay.
Okay. That complicates a
Mm.
lot of things because um, for some people it is unacceptable. Then there are certain benefits you can avail in the tax system. Okay. If you are married, if you are living with someone, you cannot avail. But
Mm.
civil union have no legality basically.
Mm.
Civil union is just like you are a roommate. So that kind of complexity, yeah, that might change in future with the 6-3 question in Supreme Court, and
Mm.
now that Clarence Thomas has um, significant power despite of not being the chief. Okay,
Mm.
yeah, that might actually happen. I'm not sure how acceptable it is going to be. Are Republicans so so stubborn on that issue? I'm not sure.
Mm. They're not. Yeah, it's not
I,
on the
yeah,
very
I think
immediate list for them. Yeah, high on priority right now.
yeah, the backlash of Roe versus Wade reversal is already hurting them, so they might not end up pursuing it.
Mm. 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 That's true. That's true.
This episode, I think, is like a beautiful beginning episode of the entire Santos equation, and the
Mm.
last uh, scene where he's announcing his candidacy as the next president. He focuses a lot on the word hope, which ends up kind of becoming the catchphrase for Barack Obama campaign.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a lot of uh, um, small things which were, I mean, sort of planted in this episode, which ended up deciding the entire, entire arc of the other stories in future.
Mm.
Um, I think the most complex scene in this episode was when Josh was going to tell Bartlett that I am
Mm.
quitting.
Yeah, yeah.
What is your take about it?
I actually wanted to see that scene. That's what even because I had forgotten that they don't show what conversations happen. And it is, I mean, they have a father-son relationship also. The
Hmm,
Leo and him also have the father-son relationship, but Bartlett also is a father figure for him, and he has a sense of betraying the father or leaving the father when the father needs him the most.
hmm,
And so I actually wanted to see that scene. Maybe it was better that they didn't show it, so because we have to imagine what actually went on. But yes, I mean that was a very you know heartbreaking. And um, speaking of hope, they did a very interesting thing that they intercut it with Bartlett trying to walk again.
hmm.
He is
Right.
using the crutches, and he is hoping that he can regain his balance. So interesting how they intercut both of them together.
Um, yeah, that was a little sad scene to see, um, Bartlett so weak, so vulnerable.
Mm.
It was just a little painful to see, elderly people struggle through that. Um, regarding, yeah, regarding that scene where Josh is saying that I'm quitting, I think it was better. It was more poetic to leave it, without calling it out, putting it into words. Uh,
Mm.
I think it became more impactful because sometimes in these kind of situations when you are writing, it is very, very, very difficult to put it into words. How many words are enough, and what you're going to
Mm.
say. So sometimes just leaving it at an expression or just a closing of a door, that becomes more impactful. If you remember Godfather, first, uh, the last scene, okay, they don't tell
Mm.
his wife that he is a godfather. It is just that one
Mm.
expression when the doors are closing and she sees people coming to him, Michael, and kissing his hand. Okay,
Mm.
so sometimes words are not enough. It is more impactful to play with lights and shadows and moving objects and to express the depth of the scene.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure they might have tried to write something, but then
Even I have a
development.
feeling that because
Yeah,
I mean it could have gone two ways. One would be it would be very similar to what Leo thought that okay, it's time for you to
yeah,
move on, which would have been repetition and would have lost
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
its significance. Or although I don't see him as a person who would necessarily feel betrayed and okay, you can't leave me like this and all. I mean, Toby has his personality quirks, which of course it suited that he felt betrayed.
Mm,
But I don't think the president would have been like that. But it would have been more of the same. And yeah, so it was
mm.
better for more of an impact.
Um, yeah, on the CJ subplot, I really liked the way they, showed that in the end, that she just comes out and says everything and doesn't tell anyone that whether she is or is not lesbian. Um,
Mm.
I think it might have. impact in, I mean, if it had been a real person, consider any uh, leader, okay, if you just, somebody asks him whether you are gay, and he answers that I might be, but it's none of your business.
mm,
I think that will be way more, powerful than, supporting just, just through words. Okay. Uh, she could have denied. She had advantage. I mean, if she had denied, it would have helped her with the guy she was pursuing. But she decided not to. And
mm,
that kind of honesty, okay, is needed. Because she might have to do a lot of explanation. And that guy might never reach out to her again. Okay.
mm,
Because sometimes your silence is considered to be your guilt. So, but just by saying
mm,
that, okay, I'm not going to tell you anything about it because it's none of your business, the implicit understanding of a common man will be that she is a lesbian and she doesn't want to talk about
mm,
it,
mm.
rather than the other way around. So,
I think that particular relationship it was not working out anyways for her.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean,
hmm,
it did emphasize the fact that yeah, it is nobody's business.
hmm,
Maybe a partner's business, I would say so. But otherwise, it's nobody's business, and it
hmm,
would impact how their administration is seen, how she's seen, and she's made fun of, and all of that.
hmm,
But otherwise, yeah, it is nobody's business. In fact, if you notice, she actually has a statement already typed out for that on the
hmm,
paper, and she is
yes,
about to read, and then she decides it. You know what? It doesn't matter, and I'm not going to do that. So yeah. Although I did like the scene in which she kind of uh, becomes very lucid in front of Leo and shares her frustration on of finding a partner and totally, and he just acts as if he was like, no, I didn't hear that, and we didn't have that conversation. And this is something that I think for the it has happened in the past and it will happen in the future as well. That um, even Jordan, I mean, what is his name? Peterson, Jordan Peterson, what was his name?
which one?
The psychiatrist, the Canadian psychiatrist, the Peterson, what is his name?
Uh,
The one who was considered on the right wing, Jordan Peterson.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
think you are right.
See,
Yeah.
Jordan, for some reason, it seems name sounds different, whatever. So, but he also has a point, and he also made a similar point. And no, actually, it was another guy. This is an uh, Jewish man who is very uh, controversial, and even he talks that unfortunately, when men get more and more successful, the amount of partners they can get, the pool becomes larger and larger. But on the reverse, when women get successful, the amount of men that they can date becomes smaller and smaller. And I think
Oh,
that's what CJ is thinking at that point that, dude, why is my success getting in my way? I mean, earlier when I was nobody, then there were different issues, but now my success has become an issue.
but here's my thought. Okay, so a lot of people on the right tend to show that this is a fault of a woman, that she's successful and that's why she cannot have a personal life. I think it's high time guys should suck up to it.
No, I don't.
You
Okay,
should become
I
more
don't know about
comfortable about
others.
it.
No, no, I don't know about others, but that person was not saying that this is bad. They were just saying that this is how things are currently and have been. But
Yeah,
definitely, this is something that can
when
change, and I think
when
it is changing. It is changing,
it is changing, but it
and
is
people
not
are
changing
more
enough.
comfortable. But unfortunately, yeah, I mean, the majority
Look,
of society
but
still
when
remains in
you
that mode.
when you state that position as a uh, social fact, okay, like a lot of commentators on the right tend to do, I think even on the left tend to do. When you tell that narrative, you kind of hinting that it is a woman's fault. Okay, I'm giving an example. Somebody says that, let's say there is a statistic, okay, that says that women who are wearing shorter clothes are getting raped at a higher frequency.
Mhm.
Okay, when you project that statement without any commentary, okay, you are laying the blame on the women. Implicitly, society does. Okay, you might not think it like that, but this is how most people think. But when you tell the statement like men should rein in their feelings around women who are wearing short clothes because they are not supposed to be taken by force, okay,
Mhm.
then that puts the blame on the men who are actually the culprit. Same thing is
Mhm.
happening here when you're saying a woman tends to get lesser partners as in when they become more powerful. You're blaming the women. You are getting more powerful. Don't be that women. Every time you tell a younger girl that a woman who is a CEO is probably going to have only five options as a future partner. Okay, you are implicitly telling that this is the price you have to pay. The other way it should be handled is you should be telling guys that it's good that if you are married to a
Mhm.
powerful person, what's
Yeah.
wrong in it? You might have to shuffle at things, but you can afford.
Mhm. No, I mean, definitely. I mean, this is something that even
This
Chris
is about
Rock
a
said in one.
perception only, right? You are putting somebody at the top and somebody at the bottom, and the power dynamic changes.
Mhm. No, I mean that is true because like, there was a line in Chris Rock's special which I think I had thought about it in somewhere subconsciously, but that kind of cemented in my mind. But he talks about that, marriage is, like a service industry. You both of the partners are in service to each other,
Hmm.
and you're a team, and her success is your success, and your success is her success. And that is something that is beautiful and has to be understood more and more. And
True.
yeah, I mean, if you can get in that frame of mind, I mean, it is much more beneficial, and people, I think, who are getting in the frame of mind are making it is it is more harmonious to think that way and live that way.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh yeah, that is a good point.
Anyways,
Mm.
let's wrap up. This was a great conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it,
Yes,
and yeah, we should do this more often.
yes. Let's do this more often.
Okay.
Okay
Thank
then.
you.
Yeah.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.